Steele Venters has officially been cleared to return to basketball activities, giving Gonzaga a much-needed offensive weapon out on the perimeter.
You are Locked On Zags, your daily podcast on the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, y'all? Happy Wednesday, and welcome into the Locked On Zags podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host and longtime Gonzaga podcaster, Andy Patton, here to bring you news and updates on all things Zag athletics. Today's episode of Locked On Zags is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first bet of $5 or more wins. Well, Grand Canyon's joining the Mountain West Conference a year early, and folks, the departing members, they are not happy about it. We're going to unpack that drama to close out the show. We're also talking about Ben Gregg's latest career move, signing a new contract and still participating in NBA Summer League. We'll get into that. But first, big news coming out of Spokane. Steele Venters, who has missed the last 2 years with two separate lower body injuries, I should say, has been cleared to return to basketball activities. This was all posted in a fantastic article from the great Theo Lawson of the Spokesman Review a couple days after Hoop Fest. He had a chance to speak to him over Hoop Fest weekend, so he got some of the details about Steele's latest updates. And it is what we expected that we would see. For those of you who are everyday listeners who caught this episode about a month ago, I think it came out on June 5th. We kind of talked about Steele Venters after he had posted a video, or a company that he was working out with in Liberty Lake had posted a video of him doing some workouts and some dribbling drills and shooting drills. And he looked good. He was very clear. He was moving well. And kind of, we expected that we were going to hear an update soon that, hey, he's kind of, cleared for return and getting ready to be ready for this upcoming season. But still fantastic to actually see the official news report come out here. Per Theo's reporting, Venters has been cleared by doctors, and the next step for him is getting cleared by the Gonzaga athletic training staff. So we're expecting that to happen here in the not too distant future. And getting cleared by the AT staff and being cleared by the doctors doesn't mean that Gonzaga is going to throw him right into the fire right away. It just means that there won't be any immediate restrictions put on him from a physical perspective. They may have other restrictions that they kind of hang on him as they get him prepared for this and prevent the risk of any future injuries or re-aggravations at this point. The team has indicated, and Venters has indicated, that currently he is participating in 2-on-2 drills and 3-on-3 drills while rebuilding his strength and stamina before he gets back to 5-on-5, which in the article they kind of reference that as live. He'll be live when they get to the full 5-on-5 action, and he's doing real scrimmages and participating at basically full strength. The closest you can get to replicating game action before actually getting into a game is 5-on-5 scrimmages. And so he's not quite there yet, but being able to participate in 2-on-2 and 3-on-3 is pretty obviously a good sign. And Venters himself indicated that he feels he's about a month away. And this was a little less than a week ago. So we're talking about early August or so for the timeline that Venters is offering here. His direct quote, again, pulled from the article written by Theo at the Spokesman Review. I would say I'm about a month away. I could probably go right now, but coaches are just trying to ease me into it, not trying to force it. It's June, so there's no reason to force it right now. I feel great. I'm gaining confidence in it every day. I feel like that's one of the biggest things for me, is just trying to gain confidence that it's not going to happen again. And for those who are maybe not as familiar with the Steele Venters story, what he means by it is one of two season-ending injuries that have kept him out of action since March 19th, 2023 is the last time Steele Venters played in a college basketball game as a member of the Eagles of Eastern Washington. After that season concluded, he then committed to Gonzaga out of the transfer portal. In fact, for anybody who needs a reminder of how long it's been for poor Steele Venters, he committed to Gonzaga about a week before Ryan Nembhard committed to Gonzaga. So everything that Ryan Nembhard accomplished in his 2 seasons for the Zags, setting the all-time assist record, conference assist record, 2-way contract with the Dallas Mavericks. Everything that Nembhard accomplished happened after Steele Venters had already committed to Gonzaga, and Steele has yet to play even a single game for the Zags. He tore his ACL 2 days before the 23-24 season began, where he was set to start at the small forward position. That thrust Dusty Stromer into a starting role. He was eventually replaced by Ben Gregg in that starting lineup. Venters took the entire season off while rehabbing from that injury, doing one-on-one drills with assistant coach Steven Gentry. Venters felt a pop and thought that maybe something happened with his Achilles. Unfortunately, he was correct in that assessment. It was an Achilles injury on his other leg, which is not that surprising. It was likely an overcompensation injury. At least that's, I should say, speculation on my part. I'm not a medical professional, but that is a common story that you hear, at least with these types of injuries. Unfortunately for Venters, that meant another full season. It basically reset his year-long clock, and he's went hard at work continuing to rehab and is now in a position where he has recovered from those 2 injuries. He is cleared to return to game action, like we said. And physically, while Steele Venters is ready, it's the mental hurdle at this point. The mental hurdle that he needs to get over, the mental hurdle for his, teammates, coaches, everybody around him. And then, of course, it's just the stamina. Doing workouts and grinding all off season and doing the ball handling drills, the shooting drills. I mean, if you watch that video, he's working really hard. And those 3-on-3 and 2-on-2 runs. I mean, he mentioned doing some 3-on-3 runs with Corey Kispert at the warehouse in Spokane. Like, I can't imagine those were super lackadaisical. Like, I'm sure he's working his butt off, but there is still such an immense difference between, 3-on-3 or workouts and 5-on-5. And then even so, 5-on-5 in a scrimmage setting versus actual game with the crowd and the announcers and everything. It's a whole different ball game, and you got to feel really ready to go when you get in that situation. And again, from a physical perspective, all indications from the medical professionals are that Steele Venters is ready to go, but it's that last hurdle. Does he trust his knee? Does he trust his foot? Does he trust his footwork, his movements? Being able to cut and laterally move, get in front of people, jump for rebounds. Like, does he feel fully confident that he can do those things? And ultimately, the challenging part is that he's not really going to know. Like, he may think that he does. I'm sure he thinks that he does. But you don't really know until you're out there and you're doing it. And Steele had another great quote about this in the article with Theo. He said, "I think it's really just trying to visualize me being out on the court. I played 4 years at Eastern, and I've had 2 back-to-back injuries. So just trying to gain that confidence and being positive." And for Steele, I mean, what an incredible moment it's going to be. This young man grew up in Ellensburg, rooted for Gonzaga as a kid, goes to Eastern Washington, is Big Sky Player of the Year, tremendous three-point shooter, back-to-back seasons over 15 points per game for the Eagles, hits the transfer portal. It always was kind of immediately clear he was likely going to go to Gonzaga because he had that connection to the program. He envisioned himself as being a Corey Kispert type player for the team in that role. And now he had to wait 2 full seasons before he gets to do that. I mean, he played in Craziness in the Kennel. He played in Gonzaga's exhibition game. He was so close. And then now it's been so long since he's finally been able to get that. There's going to be a lot of tears in people's eyes. His own father, Wade Venters, said in this article, like, he was tearing up just thinking about the moment that Steele Venters gets announced and gets to play in a real game at Gonzaga. And I tell you what, I cannot wait. I'm so excited for it. Now, in terms of what role he's going to play, I think that's an interesting element of this because the Zags are pretty thin at the kind of small ball 4 position. I mentioned in a recent episode, kind of doing a minutes per game projection, I kind of had Jalen Warley filling some minutes there. And I think that could be the case, but I also think Steele Venters could play that role. And again, I mean, if the vision that Mark Few and the staff had for Venters back in 2023 was to fill a Corey Kispert role, Corey Kispert spent a lot of minutes at the 4. Like, he played, I think folks may not remember that, but Corey Kispert was kind of a 4-3. He played a little bit of both at times in that championship season when Gonzaga played Baylor. For a time when Anton Watson was starting, Kispert was playing the 3, and then they switched the starting lineup and they brought Andrew Nembhard into the lineup and put Watson on the bench. At that point, you had Suggs, Nembhard, and Ayayi all starting. Those were your 3 guards. Kispert was starting at the 4. Drew Timme was starting at the 5. So Kispert's played both those roles, and if that's what they want for Steele Venters, he can really do that. And this is a kid who shot 43.5% from 3 in the 21-22 season. That was on 6 attempts per game. That's Nolan Hickman-esque. Hickman was 44.5% on about 5.5 attempts per game. So very similar volume, very similar percentage. The difference was that Hickman didn't have a lot else in his bag offensively, whereas Venters is more capable as a backdoor cutter. He's much bigger. He's a solid 6'8" and has good size on him positionally. So, I think he's somebody who could really play that kind of Corey Kispert role. He's not a great passer. He's not a great defender, but in a specialized role where he's a spot up shooter, where he's playing that small ball forward role, where he's coming up at the top of the key, kind of think what Gregg did. You're not going to get the same physicality. You're not going to get the same, offensive rebounding, but the same role of offensively of being at the top of the key, looking to make that entry pass. If you're open, taking a shot, those kind of things, I think could really work for Venters. Now, I don't think you're looking at a guy who's going to play 20 minutes per game right away. Certainly not right away, but even over the course of the season, even if he really is fully healthy and the confidence is there and the stamina comes back, I'm just not sure the role is really there for him. But if the Zags need somebody to fill some minutes at the 4, when Braden Huff or Graham Ike are in foul trouble, or Ismaila Diani could get in foul trouble, you need somebody to fill that spot. And like I said, I think Jalen Warley can do it, but I think he's more valuable as kind of a point forward, a 3. And if Venters proves capable of doing what Corey Kispert did, I could absolutely see him filling that role by the end of the season and being somebody who's not just kind of like the 8th, 9th, borderline 10th guy in the rotation, where he's more firmly in that 8th conversation where he's playing legitimate minutes night in and night out. And that would just be an incredible story for this Gonzaga fan base, for the Venters family, for all of Eastern Washington, really, to get a chance to see Steele kind of come back from these 2 significant injuries to be a real contributor for a very good Gonzaga program this year. Well, speaking of Gregg, he's set to play for the Boston Celtics in Summer League, even though he recently signed a professional contract overseas. That's a little odd. We're going to talk about that and break it down here in just a second. But first, folks, summer sports, they're in full swing. I don't know about you. It is about 90 degrees, 88 degrees out where I am in the Pacific Northwest. And whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf out on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game just a little bit more exciting. You're already following the action, so why not make it more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game with your friends while they're getting sunburned on the beach. You can use FanDuel to track your favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. It's easy to use, fast to pay out, and makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. So whether you're placing a same-game parlay or watching a bet right out into the 9th inning, FanDuel makes it feel like you're part of the action. Gonzaga's odds have been pretty stagnant, plus 3,500 to win that national championship in 2025. I thought the odds might get a little increased after Mario St-Superi signed. They didn't. So if you're feeling a little bit better about the Zags, this might be a good time to get involved. And if you're new to FanDuel, it's an even better time because new customers can bet just $5. And if you win, you'll get $150 in bonus bets. So open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. All right, folks, segment 2, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast. Moving away from our conversation about Steele Venters being cleared officially by doctors to be able to participate for Gonzaga this upcoming season after 2 years, over 800 days since the last time Steele Venters set foot on a basketball court in a game situation. Very excited for him. We mentioned how his role this upcoming season could potentially be in place of Gregg, who left after 5 tremendous seasons with Mark Few and the Gonzaga Bulldogs. So let's talk about Ben here, because there was an announcement. It actually came out in early July, but it kind of got missed by a lot of people because it was not an account that people followed. It was a club in France that posted that Gregg had signed with them. So I think it was officially on like July 2nd that he actually was reported that he was signing with this club, SIG Strasbourg, which is in France, part of the LNB Elite, which is the top level of competitive basketball in France, which is obviously a phenomenal basketball country, very arguably the second best consistent country at developing basketball talent outside of the United States. Look no further than Victor Wembanyama, but also Alex Sarr, who was the first pick last year. Zachary Rissachet was the first pick last year. Sarr was second pick. Great guys like Nicolas Batum and Evan Fournier and many others coming from France. Obviously, Gonzaga's had a rich history of French talent through their program as well. So this is all this to say that signing with the top level in France is a very, very good place to be. They compete in the EuroLeague. They compete with some of the best teams in the entire country, in the entire world, that are not in the NBA. And this club, Sig Strasbourg, one of their scouts or one of their assistant coaches got to have some connection to the WCC, man, because when Ben Gregg signed with this team, he joined two other American players on the roster. That would be former BYU forward Fusini Traore, who was with BYU while they were, of course, in the Big 12, but also in their final season or seasons, I'm not sure, in the WCC. This club also has French native and former Santa Clara guard Adama Alpha Ball on the roster as well. So Alpha Ball just finished up his senior year with the Broncos, and now he heads overseas to play for Sig Strasbourg. Fusini Traore, same thing. And now Ben Gregg will join them as well. It's a little bit of a West Coast Conference party going on out in Strasbourg, France. The team went 12-18 last year in the LNB Elite, so they weren't one of the better teams in the league. And last year, one of the players they had on the roster was former St. Mary's forward Malik Fitz. Fitz played briefly in the NBA after his career with the Gales ended. I think he played for the Clippers mostly, but that's a lot of players from the WCC on this Strasbourg club over in France. It may be a coincidence, but it sure feels like they got somebody watching. Maybe they got an ESPN Plus subscription out there and they're watching some West Coast Conference hoops when they're not playing out there. Here's a quote from Coach Giannis Galatidis, the head coach for this Strasbourg club. It's translated, so the language is a little bit wonky, but he says, he's a very versatile player with a strong personality for his young age at university. He was one of the most appreciated players, especially for his behavior and ethics. He was keen to come to Europe to prove his worth. We are convinced that he will become an important part of our squad. So here's the thing. Here's the part that many of you are probably wondering right now. Ben Gregg is on the Boston Celtics roster for the NBA Summer League, which starts in Las Vegas on Thursday. The first game for the Boston Celtics, by the way, on Friday. And that's still the case. Ben Gregg is still on the roster for the Boston Celtics. He is still set to participate with this Boston team in the Las Vegas Summer League starting on Friday, their first game, 1 p.m. Pacific time against the Memphis Grizzlies. So assuming Ben suits up, he's got a chance to compete against a player that he displaced at Gonzaga, by the way, in Efton Reed, who was on the Memphis Grizzlies Summer League squad, as well as Jeremy Jones, who, of course, was a Gonzaga player before spending the last few years overseas in Japan. So it could be a fun opportunity to see a trio of Zags in that game. But yeah, it's pretty unique that Ben Gregg is playing for a Summer League team here in the States while he already has a professional contract signed with the team in France. It's not unprecedented. This has happened before. And without knowing all of the logistics, I suspect there's some kind of out in Ben's contract with France or with the Strasbourg club that says, hey, if Boston offers me a full NBA contract or maybe a two-way deal, I don't know, again, the specifics, but my guess is there's some language in his contract that gives him an opt-out if he gets offered an opportunity to stay in the United States. Whether that's any opportunity, whether that's a specific opportunity, those are questions I don't know. Whether there's a financial kind of thing that has to happen in that case. Again, don't know all of the specifics, but I would have to imagine that Ben, if they didn't want him to play in the Celtics Summer League, they wouldn't let him play or he wouldn't have signed his contract. So I'm imagining there's some kind of deal there, but it'll be interesting kind of watching him playing, kind of knowing that his next steps are already in place. He's planning to join the team in the fall, so he's not going to like leave the day after Summer League ends necessarily. I don't know his travel plans, but I imagine he's got a little bit of time before he heads out and starts his career over there. But this is a really cool, incredibly cool opportunity for Ben, a player who obviously was a fan favorite for so many reasons in Spokane, from joining the team a half semester early because of COVID and the fact that his high school season at Clackamas High School was canceled because of COVID. So he got to join the team while he was still a high school senior. And that was, of course, the team that went to the national championship. So Ben Gregg, while he should have been taking physics class at Clackamas High School, instead of that, he was literally on the bench. And for a brief period of time in the game, he played against Baylor in that national championship game. It was garbage time when Gonzaga was already very clearly going to lose, so it probably wasn't his most fun experience playing for Gonzaga. But the fact that Ben Gregg played a national championship game when he was a high school senior is always going to be a story that I like to tell about Ben. And I'm running out of opportunities to do that as his career has ended, so we're going to do that here. But beyond that, I mentioned outworking Efton Reed to take his role when he was a sophomore, and then, stepping into a starting role as a junior, and then again as a senior, stepping into a starting role midway through the season. He did that twice. His final 2 years at Gonzaga, he averaged basically exactly 9 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. 2 years in a row, he shot exactly 37.5% from three. I should say 37.7% from three. And then his final season, that dipped to 27%, which unfortunately hurt his draft stock. I don't think he was going to get drafted either way, but it did damage his stock a little bit. But now he gets a chance to go play in a high level, with a high professional team in a country that has a rich history of basketball success. He'll get to compete against one of his former teammates in Joel Ayayi, who we mentioned on, I believe, Monday's show, that Joel is signing with Paris Basketball, a relatively new club that is in the same league, LNB Elite, the top French league. We have seen Joel play for now a couple of teams in this same league. He's never played for Strasbourg, but he's played for two other teams in the league as well. So Ben will get a chance to play against his old teammate in Joel. And there's been so many other players from Gonzaga who have played in France. Interestingly, according to ProBallers.com, which is where I find most of my international EuroLeague stats for former Gonzaga players, Killian Tilly is not among them. Killian Tilly he certainly played French basketball growing up before he came to the United States, but since his Gonzaga career has ended, he's played in the United States. He's played for the Memphis Grizzlies, the Memphis Hustle, and the G League, and then last year he played in Spain. So Tilly's not actually a player who's played professionally in France, but Joel Ayayi, of course, is. Rony Turioff is. JP Batista is. Matisse Kaita, Guy Landry-Eddy. Those are some names of players who are of French origin or of European origin who played in France. A few others who also played professionally in this same LNB Elite League include Gary Bell, Stephen Gray, Derek Rivio. I'm sure I'm missing some. This was just me spot checking some players who I know played in a lot of different leagues overseas. But this is very cool for Ben to be one of the next players on this list. Excited to see how he does with this team, and excited to see how he does with Boston in the Summer League before that, because that'll be a really cool opportunity to see what he can do against some guys who are competing for spots in the NBA. Well, folks, Grand Canyon is joining the Mountain West a year early, and the departing programs from that conference, they are not happy about it. We're going to unpack the drama to close out the show coming up here in just a second. All right, folks, segment 3, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast, and we are closing out the show talking about conference realignment, as we got a surprising update on Tuesday, as it was announced in a joint press release from the Mountain West and from Grand Canyon University that the Lopes are going to join the Mountain West officially this upcoming academic school year in the 2025-26 season. They were originally scheduled to become members the same time that Gonzaga is joining the Pac-12, the same time that the 5 departing Mountain West schools, Fresno State, Boise State, Colorado State, Utah State, San Diego State, are all joining the Pac-12. So it made sense that Grand Canyon was joining the Mountain West at the same time. But instead, in this joint statement, it was revealed that Grand Canyon is going to join this upcoming season, and that includes in fall sports, which are starting like in a month. Fall sports often start in mid-August is when you get volleyball and soccer and some of those other sports getting underway. So this is a very sudden, very dramatic change for the Lopes and for the Mountain West Conference. Of course, GCU does not have football, so it does not impact the biggest sport in college athletics and the biggest sport in the Mountain West, but they will compete right away in volleyball. They will compete right away in some other fall sports. They, of course, will compete right away in basketball and baseball, which are not as imminent in terms of when those seasons are happening. But this move impacts the Mountain West in a lot of ways and in a lot of kind of stressful ways, and that's why there's people that are not happy about this. For starters, the volleyball schedule for the upcoming season by the Mountain West was released months ago. Grand Canyon obviously was not on it. They're going to have to redo the entire schedule. And there's a reason you release it months and months in advance, is because it's kind of a pain to put together. And redoing this schedule, I mean, I don't know how many of these programs, and I have friends who work in college athletics actively, so they probably have a better sense of this. But if I was an athletic trainer, if I was an assistant coach, certainly if I was one of the players, like, finding out that, hey, the weekend I thought I had free, the weekend I made plans, now I'm going to Grand Canyon, or now, our whole schedule got flipped and 3 weekends we thought we were at home are now on the road. Like, they're going to try to minimize the damage. to how much travel or to how much changes they're making to the schedule, but you can't add an entire new team to a conference and have them have to play everybody an even amount of times and not have to make significant changes to your schedule. So for fall sports, it's going to have the biggest impact. But the Mountain West also revealed that with 11 teams in the conference, their plan for this upcoming year, for the first time, was to have a perfectly balanced 20-game schedule. Pretty self-explanatory, but what I mean by that, there's 11 teams in the conference, so my team plays all 10 other teams twice. That's 20 games, perfectly balanced. You play everybody twice, no questions, no, was the schedule balanced? Was it unbalanced? Was it unfair that they played them? Blah, 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 none of that. Except now, there is going to be that, because adding Grand Canyon brings you up to 12. So what do you do with 12 teams? Do you add a 22-game schedule? I don't think you can. At this point, teams have already committed their non-conference schedule. I don't think you can increase the number of games in the regular season. So, and I don't think you can really decrease it either and then suddenly turn around and ask these teams, hey, you got to schedule more games than you thought. That's not really fair either. So you got to keep it at a 20-game conference schedule. But now with 11 other teams in the conference, it gets a lot messier. And like I said, people are not happy about this. Boise State released a statement condemning the move, and I'm going to read it. It's a bit long, but I'm going to read it because you can feel the vitriol. You can feel the frustration in this statement from Boise State. They say, quote, the Mountain West Conference's addition of Grand Canyon University as a member for the 25-26 academic year significantly and negatively impacts the schedules, opportunities, and budgets of Boise State and the other departing universities. The Mountain West actions are also contrary to express representations the Mountain West and its commissioner made to the departing universities. And despite being members of the Mountain West through June 30th, 2026, the universities were not consulted or permitted to vote on the early invitation to GCU. We will address this matter and the harm to the departing universities in litigation. That's got some stank on it. Like, that is not a message that somebody who's lukewarm about this is saying. They are pissed. They are not happy. There can absolutely be debate about whether Boise State or the other departing members should have a vote or be consulted about the conference adding a new program. I think that's entirely reasonable that Boise State shouldn't get a vote about Grand Canyon being in the conference going forward, or the votes on UC Davis or UTEP or Hawaii, who are the other new programs that are joining the Mountain West. But I think it's incredibly reasonable that they should be consulted, or if not given a vote, at least consulted about an addition being moved up a year that does directly impact them. I mean, I think, and that's the message that Boise State is communicating with this statement. This directly impacts us. It impacts our scheduling, it impacts our travel, it impacts our money, it impacts our budget. And to find that out suddenly without being consulted at all feels like a slap in the face. It feels like the Mountain West is sending a message to the departing schools that they are no longer interested in in catering to them, in appeasing them. They cared more about making Grand Canyon happy by adding them a year early than what it would say to their other schools. And again, I understand that to a point. Gloria Navarez, the commissioner of the Mountain West, should care more about Grand Canyon right now than Boise State. I don't think that's a controversial statement, but that doesn't mean you do this necessarily. Or if you do this, then you have to understand what the consequences are going to be. And the consequences are you have pissed off your 5 departing members who, again, they were already planning to depart, but they're still here for another year, and you pissed them off a lot. And you made life really difficult for your ADs, for your schedulers, your student athletes, your coaches, your training staff. So many of these programs are significantly negatively impacted by this move. It's great for the Grand Canyon. They were going to have to compete independent. The WAC completely fell apart. Seattle U escapes to go to the WCC, which, by the way, in case you want to look for a common thread here, Grand Canyon also joined Seattle U in committing to the WCC and then backed out of that commitment and is now facing litigation from the WCC. So Grand Canyon being sued by the WCC for their departure early. Mountain West being sued by the Pac-12, and they're currently in litigation, currently dealing with that. And of course, now the other departing Mountain West schools are potentially going to do litigation, it sounds like, with the Mountain West. So everything Grand Canyon touches seems to get involved with lawyers and litigation. And again, there is a common through line there in Grand Canyon specifically. So take with that what you will, but certainly you can see the commonality here in this situation. Doesn't really directly impact Gonzaga, of course, other than the fact that these 5 programs that are getting a little pissed off at the Mountain West are going to, of course, be in the Pac-12 starting next year, but doesn't impact Gonzaga directly. Just a note of this kind of down movement that we see. The Pac-12 falls apart. They poach from the Mountain West. The Mountain West poaches from the WAC and the Big West. The Big West poaches from the WAC. The WAC falls apart. Like, we've seen this all happen, but it's messy and it's ugly, and it's not as simple as like a video game where you just click a new conference and move them over. Like, there's lives at stake. There's money involved. There's schedules involved. There's a lot going on with this. And we've seen Grand Canyon kind of, be a little flip-floppy on what they want to do, and now making this move a year early. Again, it's great for them. It benefits them, but it's pretty rough for what it's doing for everybody else in that conference. And again, it definitely feels like a message being sent by the leadership of the Mountain West to their departing schools. And I'm not sure if it's a message that particularly paints the Mountain West in a positive light at this point. Again, as we mentioned before, Grand Canyon, great basketball addition for the Mountain West. 3 straight WAC championships, 3 straight NCAA tournament appearances. They join a league that'll have New Mexico, who've been solid, Nevada, who's been up and down, UNLV, who has some upside potentially. It kind of falls off after that. The 3 new additions, UC Davis has some basketball success, Hawaii, UTEP, not as much. San Jose State, Wyoming, Air Force are the returners who don't really do a lot for basketball. So the Mountain West continues to get talked about as if it's still a really solid mid-major basketball league. And I think to some extent it is, but it's fallen off quite a bit from where it used to be. Like, you really need Nevada and one of the returners, UNLV, Wyoming, San Jose State, to really be consistently good. Otherwise, this conference is going to be a 2, maybe even just a 1-bid league on a regular basis. Although the addition of Grand Canyon certainly does help in that space. All right, folks, that's going to wrap it up for me today here on the Locked On Zags podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen or your first watch of the day. Got 2 more shows later this week. Of course, we'll keep you up to date on recruiting, keep you up to date on any more Pac-12/conference realignment expansion updates, keep you up to date on the transfer portal, NBA Summer League as that starts to get underway as well. Thanks again, folks. Have a fantastic rest of your day. And of course, as always, go Zags.